What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast, where we're going to be talking about AEW and talking specifically about AEW Full Gear predictions for the upcoming events. I'm your host for this edition, Callum Wiggins, and joining me is Mr. AEW over on Fightful.com, Robert DeFelice.
Well, thank you, Callum. I am very excited to be here with you talking AEW Full Gear as we ramp up to the final pay-per-view of the year for AEW and what will be the start of a new journey as they head to TBS on January 5th.
Yeah, this is the last pay-per-view of the year for the promotion, so there is a lot to look forward to, and there's a lot of changes incoming, not least just both of the TBS thing. There could be a lot of new personnel on the way. There's been a lot of teasing. There's been a lot of people happening, and we could see a number, if not at least one, new champion crowned on this show as well. Plenty of championship matches, plenty of hardcore matches, tag team matches. It's all over the place. But before we get started on this, I just want to make sure that I encourage everyone to, if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, to hit the like button, subscribe, check out everything that we've got going on the all the other stuff on there. Just if you want to drop a comment below, let us know what your predictions are for this event going forward. We're going to be sharing ours throughout the course of the podcast, but make sure you drop yours below as well. We'll keep the conversation going. Of course, if you're listening through the podcast feeds, then if you want to subscribe, leave us a rating, that's all greatly appreciated. Helps us climb up those charts. Of course, there's other ways that you can get in touch with us as well. There's the Mega Maniacs group on Facebook. Obviously, go to the smarkoutmoment.com website. Check out all the articles that are going on there as well. This week's Triple Threat is built around Full Gear as well. So if you want to see some written down predictions and speculation about the event, that's where you want to go as well. There's a Redbubble, TeePublic, Patreon.com. Patreon.com Smark Out Moment. That's the most effective way to just support us on the monetary side of things, get access to the dark casts. There's the Pick Your Poison tier, where you can basically request us to do anything AEW related, WWE related. Hell, make us do something about NWA. We don't want to, but you can make us do that with the Pick Your Poison
As long as it's
tier.
about old school NWA, listen, I'll do anything about old school NWA.
Oh yeah, the old school stuff is fine. New school stuff, you can. It might take more than $50, but we'll see what we can arrange there. And hopefully you're enjoying all of the content we've got going at the moment. Of course, Tony is not with us at this point in time. He's enjoying his time in Brazil. At least I hope he's enjoying his time in Brazil. And so we're taking the reins for the time being. But you can hear Tony's voice with all of the special content we've been doing for the fantasy, or doing the all-time fantasy WWE draft things. We've been putting out all the content related to that. So we have the draft itself. Tony's card is out. The pay-per-view card.
All of our individual cards are out because mine dropped this morning.
Oh, excellent.
So all the individual cards are out, and there's still more content to come from there. I do want to say that we have all appreciated the wonderful feedback we've gotten on those. Those were a blast to record, and I do believe that more will be on the way.
Yes, we basically decided that, internally we've had a few discussions about making drafts kind of a staple of the podcast going forward. So we enjoy doing them. Other people seem to enjoy us doing them as well. So we're going to make sure to stock up on this, like hop on the trend while it's still hot.
And I know that at least one of the wonderful Patreons has been mulling around the idea of doing a Pick Your Poison for another draft, so that might be headed our way really soon. And yeah, we really enjoyed doing that, so that's exciting.
Yeah, if you want more draft content, or if you want some more content related to any of the stuff, whether it be like more top rope lists or superstar scores or anything, any of our other little gimmicks, and you want to make sure that we get round to doing it on the superstar or the topic that you want, Pick Your Poison is definitely the way to go. But that's enough plugs out of the way for now. Let's move on to a very, very exciting pay-per-view card. 10 matches announced. I think it's safe to say this is one of the most stacked shows on paper that they've ever produced.
I think that is more than fair to say. It's funny, I do the Fightful podcast for AEW, like Callum mentioned, and one of the questions that we keep getting over there was, do you think there will be any debuts? Because obviously, Bray Wyatt's in free agency, and there's so many people hitting free agency with Ring of Honor and closing for the time being, and the recent WWE releases. But this is one of the shows that doesn't need a debut. It really doesn't. This show can stand on the strength of its card alone and the strength of some of the title switches that can happen, with at least one being all but a guarantee. And I'm so excited for this show.
Absolutely. So let's just break down the card then. Let's start with the buy-in match. It's going to be Nyla Rose and Jamie Hayter in a tag team match against Hikaru Shida and Thunder Rosa. This is obviously built around the TBS title tournament, because Nyla Rose will be taking on Hikaru Shida and Jamie Hayter will be taking on Thunder Rosa in the quarterfinals. So there's one thing that I want to kind of bring back to occasionally throughout the course of our podcast here, where we talk about the leaked card that was posted around social media for a little while, of that image of Tony Khan holding up that piece of paper with loads of different names suggested, and people suggesting that was going to be the Full Gear card. And quite a lot of those things have actually come to fruition, but a lot of them are either different or tweaked or just completely out of left field in comparison to that. This one, originally, it seemed that on the card it was going to be Thunder Rosa against Jade Cargill, but now this buy-in match is happening instead. Do you think that it's been a good idea to extend the TBS Championship tournament a little bit? Because if it was going to be Thunder Rosa against Jade Cargill, the suggestion would have been that would have been a semi-final match.
Yeah, and I think that this is better because it just gets more women's wrestling on the show, and they can have a longer match. And it really, at this point, Nyla and Shida are like golden in this company. They constantly interact, they're constantly near the top of the card for the women. And I think this is better because the personalities involved can put on a better match, and Jade Cargill squash matches are probably best suited for television for now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this should be a pretty good match between the people involved. I don't think it's going to be it won't be. I don't think it's super spectacular. It is on the buy-in show as well. So, but hopefully that means they'll be given a bit more time to do stuff. Getting Thunder Rosa on pay-per-view card, or basically any card AEW has at the moment, is the right move at this point in time. She's probably the second most over women's wrestler they have, and so having her on the card was probably a given. I feel like one glaring omission for the women's division, and there are only two women's matches on this card, so there could be more room to grow there, but I think the most glaring omission is Serena Deeb.
I think it's better this way only because even though Deeb and Shida have the rivalry, Nyla is going to face Shida in the tournament, but I would enjoy seeing Serena Deeb. It's just there's no spot for her. That's one of the disappointing things about her being a heel and Baker being a heel. You can't mix them up just yet. And they don't do three-ways. That's one thing about this company. They do not do a lot of three-way dances, triple threats, fatal four-ways. They don't do a lot of that.
Yeah, I feel like it does make logical sense, this tag team match, due to the participants involved and their different configurations in the TBS tournament, but it means that the match itself will just be there to be a fun match. It won't have really much stakes attached to it, or just it's more of a preview for the more important matches that'll be coming in the week ahead, I imagine. So it's really kind of hard to predict in that way, because realistically either team could win, and there's really no ramifications one way or the other. But what way are you leaning here?
The heels, because Jamie Hayter should pick up a victory, and that will give them the edge, even though I think in the tournament itself, the baby faces will win both matches.
I am personally going to go with Shida and Rosa, because I feel like because it is a buy-in match with no real like massive ramifications attached to it, then you would just go naturally with the babyface team, start the crowd off, get the crowd off hot, get the crowd excited to start with. So have Thunder Rosa and Shida win. In terms of their actual matches for the TBS tournament, I imagine Thunder Rosa will defeat Jamie Hayter, but I have Nyla Rose going over Hikaru Shida because of Serena Deeb getting involved.
Yeah, that's actually, I wouldn't mind that, because that would be a third rivalry in the women's division, so that'd be really cool. But who knows? That's the beauty about AEW. It's hard to tell.
there's a lot of that in this card in particular. A lot of it is, I don't think it's definitely not taking away from any of the matches, but the unpredictability or the fact that you could go multiple different ways with different results does makes it harder to predict, but that's a good thing.
Absolutely, because I think in wrestling you want unpredictability, and AEW continues to provide that for us.
I kind of want to go along the lines of like I don't know how really to describe it. Predictable unpredictability is probably the weirdest thing. I want it to make sense, and everything that AEW does makes, well, for the most part, makes a lot of sense. But then you also throw in a few swerves in between it, but they still make sense in context. And I think that's what AEW have been managing to do, navigate pretty well so far in their existence. But
you know what it is? Tony Khan is a wrestling fan through and through. Like, if you ever listen to this man talk, you'll see that he really is a wrestling fan. And I think he would fit right in on even like some of our podcasts. You know, like he just wants the best wrestling show possible, and it's providing great content.
Tony's always got an open invitation if he wants to. He wants to pop up one time. Let's move on to. Again, there's so many great matches on this card, so it's hard to pick one and just go like, okay, that's one's probably least important. But I think my eye's being drawn to Pac and Cody Rhodes versus Malachi Black and Andrade El Idolo.
You know what I love about this? It's not like, okay, we have to do these singles matches and this tag team match will be saved for television. Let's do a tag match on pay-per-view, and just that's a different kind of match. Like, WWE doesn't normally do stuff like that. Like, you would never see just, hey, all these parties are fighting, so let's put them in the ring together on pay-per-view. And it feels different, and I like that.
I kind of subscribe more to the belief that not every match on a pay-per-view card needs to be like the massive sell or the big match in a feud or rivalry, because when we get to the top end of things, they're the matches that are going to draw the house. They're the ones that are going to get the people most excited. This match in here is just a nice little, okay, this should be a lot of fun. I'll enjoy watching it while it happens, but I know that the actual bigger singles matches and feuds surrounding it will take place probably on television in the time going forward. But this is a nice little, it's a different configuration of seeing these people. So we've seen Cody Rhodes taking on Malachi Black multiple times. He faced Andrade in a singles match recently as well. Pac has obviously had multiple matches with Andrade. He's now been involved with the getting involved in the Malachi Black stuff. I imagine that somewhere down the road we're going to see Pac and Black against each other one-on-one. But
yeah, and I like so here's the thing. There's a pairing of Black and Andrade, right?
Mm.
And I know Tony Khan recently said, well, his old friend, and they were never in character friends. In fact, Black beat Andrade for the NXT title, but they were friends behind the scenes, and I guess they've chosen to bring that to the forefront. So far, it's worked pretty well, even though character-wise, they couldn't be more different.
Yeah, I feel like these are two marriages of convenience more than anything else, because they are Pac doesn't get on well with anybody that isn't Phoenix and Pentagon, whereas Cody wants to be liked by everybody, but he's seemingly liked by very few. Whereas Black and Andrade are just people that are currently at odds with both Cody and Pac and have kind of gotten mixed into each other's business, and now they've decided, okay, we need to work together to deal with our common enemies. So it's been quite organically brought together, this team. So it's not like, I don't think either of these ones we're going to see as like pursuing the tag team titles in a few months' time. But it works for now. And yeah, I think it will be an excellent tag team match. I don't have any reason to suspect otherwise. Again, it's kind of difficult to choose who will get the victory in this one, though, because somebody who's a reasonably big deal has got to take a pinfall here.
You know, Pac can eat it, though.
Pac is probably the most likely because of he's slightly less. He's probably the least frequently used out of all these people on TV, and he always is like more of a a back and forth. He'll come in, he'll go back to the UK for a little while, come back. He has that sort of dynamic, so he's less likely to be pushed super hard going forward. But it depends on whether you want Black and Andrade to get the victory. Again, I don't see why not, but I guess the most interesting question or the most interesting ramifications of this match is what happens with Cody during this.
I think Cody might be left to dry. He might just end up on the wrong end of Pac, and then it's, hey, everybody leaves Cody behind.
I mean, I can imagine a scenario where Pac and Cody are slightly at odds during the match in general, just because Pac doesn't play nice with people in general. And it could be an instance where Pac could have made a tag to Cody but doesn't do it, and that ends up leading with him getting pinned, and so Cody's pissed at Pac, and that helps just further him along the lines. It's like just nobody wants to get along with him, and he's pissed about it, and leads him further and further down this darker road.
I love it.
But again, there's multiple ways they could go with this. They could just have Pac and Cody get the win, and this is just another confirmation of Cody getting his win back against Andrade and finally drawing a line under this whole rivalry with Malachi Black. Again, there is no certainty in this one.
But I'm not as sour on Cody as everybody else is.
I'm not either.
I genuinely think Cody is one of the best examples of, all right, you got a shinier toy, so now the one that you used to like, you feel comfortable saying again that he's kind of overrated, blah, blah, blah. But I want Cody in more main events. Like I said, this is the first time I feel like he's not in his own bubble, in his own Codyverse in so long, and I want to see him continue to interact.
So, gun to your head, who are you going with this one?
Cody and Pac.
Okay, I'm going Malachi and Andrade. I'm going to go with my approach of Pac eats the pin and Cody gets pissed about it. But again, so many different directions.
Right, and what do you think? And I don't know if you want to just parlay this into talking about the tag title match, because they're kind of bleeding.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
But what do you think about FTR kind of becoming affiliated with Andrade instead of the Pinnacle in recent weeks?
Well, the Pinnacle have kind of been very much underplayed as a faction. It's always been very much split between MJF and Wardlow and occasionally Sean Spears in that little triangle, and then FTR have been doing their own thing, whether it's with Santana Ortiz or with the Lucha Brothers now. They're very much not islands themselves, and I feel like the stuff they did with Andrade, it's more of a case of, okay, Andrade helped us win the AAA Tag Team Championships, so now we're repaying the favor. There's that relationship thing that MJF alluded to about the fact that Andrade essentially paid for their services for a couple of weeks up until this show. So I feel like there's just some, I guess, inter-faction collusion going on. I don't really see it beyond the fact of, I don't see FTR being part of Andrade's stable beyond this show.
It's weird, because if WWE did this, I'd be like, it's probably just going to be lost in the shuffle. But I can almost guarantee that this will be brought back up, even if it's to get Cody back to MJF or to get Andrade fighting with MJF. This will almost certainly come back around.
Yeah, it definitely, again, sows some threads between different factions and different individuals to make sure that they could potentially come back and use this as material going forward. So whether it does or whether it doesn't, it's still nice to have those little chains in place. But in terms of the actual Tag Team Championship match, obviously it's the Lucha Brothers defending against FTR. So I think that the Tag Team Championships in general and tag team scene in AEW, they obviously have probably the strongest tag team roster in all professional wrestling right now. But it's not exactly super exposed or super highlighted in terms of their championship picture. And I think Lucha Brothers are suffering from something slightly similar to what the Young Bucks were suffering in the previous reign, which is their pay-per-view matches are always great, and whenever they're on TV and they're having matches, it's great. But it doesn't feel like they're building up teams to build super exciting feuds around the championship picture. It's more just a case of, hey, let's put this great team against this great team, and they'll have a great match, and then we move on, rather than actually building a real heated feud. At least with this one, they've given something with FTR winning the AAA championships from Lucha Bros. So there is a bit more animosity there, but I mean, what do you think? How do you feel like they're handling their tag team championship scene right now?
Look, a lot of people would say they don't like it. I love it. Like, tag teams matter. Yeah, I don't care if it's, well, FTR has been in the scene for a while. Why haven't we cycled in TH2 or Private Party? I just like that. Never once in this company have I felt like tag team wrestling doesn't matter.
No, definitely. I mean, whether it is all around the tag team title scene or whether it's just any tag team match within the actual promotion itself, it does feel like they value the medium of tag team wrestling, which is obviously, I think, the most important thing. This tag team match, it's between, I mean, we have seen this match a couple of weeks ago, but now under pay-per-view conditions, I imagine they'll take things to a whole nother level. FTR are obviously one of the best heel tag teams, I'd say, even at this point of all time, let alone just of the modern era. And Lucha Bros are tons of fun. The crowd will be super behind them, as they always are. I don't see any real possibility of FTR winning the championships here. I don't think it's entirely out of the question, but it would feel like a bit of a damp squib of a reign for Lucha Brothers if that was the case. So I imagine they will retain here.
I think heel champions is something that the company might end up falling into a trap of relying on. I personally think sometimes it's just better when a babyface chases. But unless you have extreme plans to do, hey, let's go and heat up Private and Powerful against FTR, I would keep it on the Lucha Bros and let them continue their reign.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. I feel like it's not quite ready yet for Lucha Bros. I don't know who the team will be. I know that FTR will be a nice stepping stone for them, and then hopefully it will revert back to FTR being more included within Pinnacle related stuff going forward, or at least for a little while longer, and Lucha Bros can move on to another challenger. I don't know who necessarily would be the ones to take the titles off of them. My hope would be Proud and Powerful, but again, we're probably more in a better place to discuss that as and when we find out they're still the champions. Once we know who the new champions or who the champions will be coming out of Full Gear, we can have a bit more of a clear discussion of what's next for these belts.
It's weird because I think Proud and Powerful should be next. I also think Jurassic Express is sitting right there. They're super, popular. But
we could have some Red Dragons coming in to.
We could have Red Dragon coming in. That's another one of those things. But it's just another one of those beautiful scenarios where you're like, wow, the AEW tag team picture is really great.
Yep. So speaking about a bit more of the tag team picture and something slightly related to the Red Dragon stuff that we mentioned, let's talk about Christian Cage and Jurassic Express against the Superkliq of Adam Cole and the Young Bucks in a six-man tag full count anywhere match. So this sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, look, you could say what you want about PWG matches and stuff like that, but this is there's going to be a PWG match with guys from, at this point you can call Adam Cole a WWE guy in a way because he was there for so long. You got Christian and Adam Cole who had a WWE run, and it's just going to be fun, right? It's just going to be a lot of crazy fun. I feel like the Superkliq should win here unless the message is Jungle Boy pins somebody, even if it's Adam, great. If it's one of the Bucks, great. Because the emphasis should be on Jungle Boy if we're not going to put the Superkliq over.
Yeah, I think the most exciting aspect of this match to me is just thinking about all the different places in the arena and across the crowds and stuff like that they are going to go, and what spots they're going to pull out during it as well, because these guys, especially on the Superkliq side, they're very creative when it comes to spots like that. So, and I imagine there'll be areas where Luchasaurus is just throwing people around all over the place, and Jungle Boy will do some high octane dives as well. But yeah, it's 6 guys who you know you can trust, who you know you can going to have just a killer match together. And even though they have been leaning on especially the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express feud for a little while now, I feel like this is a good place to, I guess, at least in some ways culminate it, even if it leads to a couple of singles matches down the road as well. I mean, as we mentioned earlier with the leaked sheet that came out, it appeared originally that there was going to be a tag team match between Jurassic Express and the Young Bucks, and then Christian Cage and Adam Cole would have a singles match instead. But those are things that we can definitely have further down the road, especially I think Christian Cage versus Adam Cole is a match that should happen. And I'm certain they will do it down the road. But
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it would have meant a little bit more to spotlight Adam here, even though everybody knows how good Adam Cole is, right? But I think it would mean even more for Adam Cole to start building major singles wins here. But for now, I'm good with the car crash match, and I think Superkliq will win. But like I said, if the babyface side wins, it's got to be Jungle Boy getting the pin.
yeah, I think that's one thing that we can agree on, is that even though I'm not entirely clear about which team is going to win this one, the person that stands the most to benefit from the babyface team winning is Jungle Boy. So Jungle Boy should get the pin or submission if the babyface is going to win. If Superkliq wins, it should be Adam Cole getting the victory over probably either Christian or Luchasaurus.
Yeah, I think Jungle Boy should be protected, or as protected as possible.
Yeah. So it'll kind of come down to whichever of those two is going to be the one that gets the final one. And I think that adds a layer of unpredictability to the match as well, because you could have those two in completely different time zones pretty much because of the stipulation. And so one could be doing something to, let's say, Adam Cole's in the ring battling Christian Cage while Jungle Boy's somewhere in the back battling Nick Jackson. And so you might even get a situation where you do a picture-in-picture thing where Jungle Boy's got the snare trap locked in and Adam Cole's just about to hit the final, like the boom shot, and get a victory as well. So you could say, oh my god, it's right down to the wire who's going to get the victory here. But yeah, I would personally go with I'd go with Superkliq, just because there is a natural story that is kind of in a subtext at the moment of, you've got potentially Red Dragon coming in, you've got potentially Kevin Steen coming in the future as well. There's a lot of moving parts that could be into a kind of a sub-main event feud between the current members of the Elite, Kenny Omegas, the Bucks, if you can get Gallows and Anderson involved at some point later on as well. Then you've got Cole, the former members of the Undisputed Era, Kevin Steen, all of these people coming in, and that could be something that you could tell as a really good side story while other people are chasing the World Championship per se.
So, yeah, and I think it's amazing how quickly that main event scene is filling up. You know, like it's good though. I mean, it's a great problem to have.
Yeah, but I feel like in order to really launch yourself into that, there needs to be a very firm narrative placed of the fact of who's better, Kenny Omega or Adam Cole, who should be leading that group. And in order for that message to really sink in, you need to have Adam Cole winning as often as possible. So I feel it makes the most sense to have Adam Cole get the victory here.
Yeah, and look, I don't know what Roddy's contract status is, but we know Kyle's is up next.
I thought he signed a new contract last year, or this year.
That has not mattered for anybody. So if they're dumb enough to release Roderick Strong, like,
yeah, but
maybe they can sit on it and just wait for the Undisputed Era.
I mean, I kind of feel like for Roddy to go, the ball's very much in WWE's court on that front. So it's whether they decide, okay, we don't need this guy anymore. Then he'll go, and then he could fill it out. But I feel like they will proceed. If Kyle O'Reilly becomes available, they'll proceed with the 3 members of the Undisputed Era. The 3 core members of the Undisputed Era for now. And get Roddy if Roddy becomes available. But yeah, I don't feel like they'll hold off on that. And because there's just too much narrative they can tell of that immediately.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to hold off on that. But if they did, like,
yeah, there's always possibilities. Like, there's a lot of stuff going along.
We could talk forever about the amount of just simple possibilities that exist, and that's the fun thing about AEW.
Another fun thing about AEW is they can put matches like this together with very little time to build it up, but make it one of the hottest matches on the entire card. That is CM Punk versus Eddie Kingston.
So let's get this one out of the way. On the sheet that Tony Khan had scribbled in, it said CM Punk Wardlow. I like Wardlow. I do. And I like the idea of CM Punk eventually feuding with MJF. I do. But I was more than ready to see CM Punk get into it with someone. And it happened in a way that I could have never imagined, right? Like, you're expecting he'll get into it with the Elite or something, and that'll be his first big rivalry. And then it's actually, he has to confront his past demons, which I think is amazing. Like, he has to confront that he was an asshole in his past, and Eddie Kingston has never forgotten or forgiven.
Yeah, I feel this entire build is rooted in so much history and story that in just one very, very good promo segment on Rampage and just one backstage, short few minute backstage confrontation prior leading into that promo segment, they've managed to stir up the fact that this is deeply personal and root it in at least a fragment of reality, and then expand upon that with Punk basically saying to Kingston, we all saw potential in you, but you're lazy and you're sloppy and you're a bum, and that means that you're never gonna reach your full potential, and you're never gonna reach full potential. And Kingston just calling out people like Bryan, Danielson, and now CM Punk for lording it over themselves and being holier than thou and being an asshole to people backstage. It's getting a little bit inside baseball, but I don't feel it's hitting that too far. But Kingston is really hammering home the fact that Punk used to be, as you say, a complete prick. And now Punk is trying to turn over a new leaf. He seems happier than he's ever been before. And that was the way that he came into the company. But now there's this counterbalance thing, because Kingston is organically super popular and super over as a babyface. Whereas Punk is obviously super over because he's just recently come back and the crowd absolutely love him. And now there's going to have to be... It's not a case like one's got to give, because they can both walk out of here still baby faces, but the crowd is going to have to make a choice in the match, one way or the other. And I could see it being a very tense standoff here. There's going to be a lot of people behind Eddie. There's going to be a lot of people behind Punk. There's going to be a lot of people booing Eddie. There's going to be a lot of people booing Punk. And that really adds a layer of realism to this.
Isn't that what you want, though?
Oh, of course. This is one of the matches that I'm most excited for, because even though, just from a personal perspective, I feel like it's very obvious that Punk will win, because I just don't feel like Kingston is the guy that should be the one that takes the first victory from Punk. I really want to see what they do together, because Kingston is on an incredible run at the moment, both on the mic and in the ring. That match with Bryan Danielson was one of AEW's best matches all year. And I imagine that he's going to pull out the stops to have another great match with CM Punk here, because he's on the roll of his career.
He really is. And you hit the nail on the head when you used the word realism. I am obsessed with the realism in this match. Like, the realism surrounding this match is so strong. It's so good. It's a real life conflict. Like, you get into it with somebody and you say, I don't like the fact that you were an asshole to me when I was coming up in the industry, and Punk says, you know, it wasn't just me, it was other people. And I want to see what's going to happen when these guys do clash, because they both have their strong points and they're both right in some ways. And I'm very interested in seeing where that goes.
Yep, I'm so excited to see the story that they tell in this match, how aggressive CM Punk now gets. Does CM Punk lean more into heelish tendencies during this match? Does he berate Kingston? Does he try and keep Kingston down? Does Kingston just pop back up, keep fighting, keep going on? How does the match progress towards the end? There are so many facets about this match that I'm super excited to see how they tell the story of it. And that's really driving me towards, like, as I say, this is one of the matches that I'm most excited for. And I've already said I think Punk's the one that would get the victory here, but if they did have Kingston beat Punk and he's the one that, and this starts a more, I guess, long-term feud between the two of them, and this is like Punk's first real, okay, it's not just one and done, move on to whoever's next, and this is like the start of something real that will last until like the start of next year, then I'd be totally fine with Kingston winning.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that Kingston won't get the win until everybody's on board with Punk being a heel, and then he'll get the win, and then it'll mean even more.
Yep. So moving on to another singles match with more personal animosity as well, and that's a match between two of the pillars of AEW: Darby Allin with Sting likely, and MJF with Wardlow. So Darby Allin, MJF. So this has been built around the fact that MJF has been talking about the fact that he sees himself a pillar of the company and he's desperate to get another opportunity at the World Championship. He calls Darby Allin another one of the pillars as well. But they've never had a straight 1-1 match in AEW as of yet. And that has been really, really smart. I don't know whether that was the plan all along.
I'm sure it was.
But it's been very considered to hold those two apart from each other up until this point, because they've built up they're two strong characters in AEW. They've got massive fan bases and they're firmly established as like part of. You can't have AEW at the moment without Darby Allin or MJF. But they never touched, and this is the first time we get to see which one of these two is the better man. And MJF is playing on, obviously, doing his thing of going as close to the bone as he possibly can, calling out Darby's recklessness and talking about his uncle and stuff like that, calling out Sting and the Lex Luger situation as well. Just, again, pushing Darby's buttons, and Darby has been trying to push the idea that he's going to stay level-headed, he's going to stay focused, and he's going to beat MJF one-on-one. But there's always that essence of eventually Darby's going to snap and take it a little bit too far, and that's the interesting dynamic of this match as well. Again, it's something that's you can't help but look forward to.
Yeah, I'm, falling for the trap here, but I'm of the opinion that MJF will probably get the win because Darby can't help himself. But I'm kind of feeling like the MJF formula is he gets the win, then they get their win back, and then overall MJF kind of comes out winning the rivalry. So I'd like to see Darby beat him here, and MJF be the one guy that Darby just can't. Or Darby being the one guy that MJF just can't beat.
Yeah, I think that would be a good story as well. I like the idea that Darby's the one that gets the victory on MJF. That sends MJF on a bit of a spiral. I would like to see something happen to MJF that gets MJF into, because MJF is basically, the build up to this match has been him touting, or at least leading into it, touting the fact that he should be world champion and he should be the next in line for the championship. But he doesn't wrestle very often. Like they've noted things on commentary where it's like, oh, MJF has completed his quarterly obligatory match and stuff like that. It's
which I love. Like,
oh no, I love that aspect of it. But then I would love for this match to happen, Darby to beat MJF, and then MJF to come out and say, like, I want a title shot. And Tony says, well, you lost your last match and you lost the let's say you lost the feud with Jericho, but you lost your last pay-per-view match against Jericho as well.
To Jericho, yeah.
Yeah. And it's basically have to say, well, you don't deserve a title match. If you want a title match, then you earn it. And that puts MJF on a course to, obviously, he doesn't turn babyface or anything like that, but he has to earn it by having matches, more frequent matches on Dynamite and Rampage and Dark Elevation to build up his rank, to build up his stature to the point where he becomes absolutely undeniable as the next challenger for the title. And that could be the thing that extends it out, let's say if Page does win the World Championship, to give him build up a little bit of time and give Page a bit of a longer reign before MJF is ready. He's now ranked number 1 and he's going to be challenging for the title at, say, I don't know, Double or Nothing or All In next year, or All Out next year, so I say. I mean, I feel like, and then you've got a ready-made feud if MJF does win the title with Darby Allin, because Darby Allin beat him here, and so Darby Allin should be somebody that gets a shot at him down the line. And then it's just a case of not only is the title on the line, but can MJF avenge the loss to Darby Allin? So the more I think about it, the more it makes probably better sense, both for on a positive side with both guys, if Darby Allin was the one to get the win here.
Yeah, I think he should, but I'm not sold that MJF won't just beat him. So I'm gonna say that they fall into the trap of MJF winning, but I'd love to see Darby Allin actually pull out the victory.
Yeah, MJF is very heavily protected, obviously, so it's never a good decision to really bet against MJF in these types of matches. But I've decided that I like my idea that I just put out there so much that I'm just going to back it to the hill and go with Darby Allin to get the victory here.
I want to see it, but I think ultimately MJF gets the win.
You're probably that's probably the more logical approach to take, and you probably will be right. But with AEW, there's always the hope that something different will happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's go into another more hardcore-based multi-man match. It's going to be the 5-on-5 Minneapolis street fight, pitting the Inner Circle of Chris Jericho, Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara, Santana and Ortiz against the Men of the Year, Ethan Page, Scorpio Sky, and American Top Team, Junior Dos Santos, Andrei Arlovsky, and Dan Lambert. So I know that you've had, let's say, mixed feelings towards the progress of this feud so far.
So, the thing that everybody else minds, I don't mind. I'm not, losing sleep over the quality of the promos or the content of the promos. I just think that you have to follow your fan base. And if your fan base really isn't feeling it, then it's going to overall hurt the angle. This is an angle that I'm sort of over because, first of all, it's not Jericho's strongest work in a while, but I'm mostly just I don't like the fan reaction to it, and that sours me on it. Now, I think that this should be a lot of fun. I think the Inner Circle is really good at these kinds of feuds, and I want to see more of that. I want to see more of, if you're going to have a faction, have them together, because if you're not going to have them together, then don't have the faction. They could have split up back at Double or Nothing, and they chose not to do that.
Yeah, there's certain aspects I like about this feud. There's certain things I don't like. I feel like the Lambert stuff has been a bit too on the nose, really. And it's I think it's gone on a little bit too long. I feel like there should have been more done in this feud so far to really elevate Page and Scorpio Sky, and I don't feel like they're going to really take the next step forward out of this feud. I feel like they'll just fall back to being just a tag team in the scene going forward after this. I don't like the fact that it's taken a lot of shine away from the TNT Championship, which is one of the big titles and the type of thing. And Sammy Guevara's won it, and now he's immediately involved in a feud, which essentially is Chris Jericho versus Dan Lambert is the main essence of the feud. And so he's holding that title, and he has defended it against Ethan Page, but that's a title that should be defended almost every other week on Dynamite, and now it's basically been absent for the last month or so.
Yeah, which is weird because right before that, they weren't doing a lot with the Inner Circle, right? It's like Sammy Guevara was,
He was doing more stuff with El Fuego than more than anything else.
he was doing stuff with his own people and he was doing stuff like that. So it felt good when they gave him the belt. And then they were like, hey, here's the idea
Jericho's got a
of,
thing going on. We need you back.
yeah, we need you to do this. When it was like, no, do what you were doing. Otherwise, you should have kept the TNT title on Miro. But I'm all for a street fight. I am of the opinion, I know everybody thinks Dan Lambert's just going to get, his comeuppance. I think that Tom Lawler debuts here. I think he helps American Top Team win because they've said it very clearly. The goal is for Lambert to pin Jericho, and I think that happens by any means necessary.
Yeah, I know you've been hard on the idea that this is the feud to get Filthy Tom on TV and get him into Dynamite. I feel like
if you're going to do that, I think this is the place to do that.
I personally definitely not because I don't like Tom Lawler. I definitely do think that he would be a great addition to AEW. It's more of a case of I don't want this feud to continue or to take a slightly different evolution from it. I think that you could do something where, personally, the way I would do it and try and like have your cake and eat it too, is have the Inner Circle get the victory. They force Dan Lambert to tap out to the Walls of Jericho or something, and that's like the end. And you cast Dan Lambert aside, but then Filthy Tom comes in the next night, or the next Dynamite, lays out Jericho and says, "That's for what you did to my boys in American Top Team," and that's kind of okay. Now the American Top Team's gone, and then you won't see like Lambert or like prominent other the MMA guys involved, but you have Tom Lawler in, and Tom Lawler's more than capable of speaking for himself. He can build up his own reputation there, and then you use the end of this feud as the catalyst for another one to help establish Tom Lawler by putting him immediately against Jericho. So
you can do that. I'm also in favor of, maybe just Jericho wins here. Maybe this is the thing. Because we had heard for a while that Jericho was going to go on a break, and he hasn't. So maybe this is the thing that gets Jericho on a break. Santana and Ortiz need to go after those tag titles. Sammy needs to be a champion. Maybe it's Hager. Maybe I'm overlooking it. Maybe it's Hager that turns on Jericho.
Yeah, again, there are plenty of options to go with here. I feel like for me, it's a very classic babyface heel thing with this one, and the main heel is Dan Lambert, and this is the match designed for him to get his comeuppance. I know it doesn't always need to be as like straight laced as that, but I feel like with the way that this feud has progressed and how long Dan Lambert has already been on screen so far, it's been like several months at this point. I feel like now's the time of, okay, you cut your losses here, Dan Lambert can go to another promotion, do pretty much the same exact shtick again, and come up with the same result, and then maybe he'll be back in Impact in a year or so. But I feel like this is where you should draw the line. Otherwise, you risk turning what's currently it's a polarizing angle as it is. It could start like just generating real go away heat.
Yeah, I really feel like cut it off here because people are already sick of it. But if you're not going to, then I think obviously Dan Lambert should pin Chris Jericho with either Hager's help, Filthy Tom's help, or they haven't brought back Masvidal, who would need Chris Jericho in the head a few times.
I think it's very unlikely that Masvidal will turn up, considering the fact that he's supposedly injured and can't compete in the UFC right now.
Ah, that's a shame.
But I mean, we'll wait and see with that one. I think he pulled out of a fight that was meant to happen as well. So I think that if he was to do that, to pull out of the UFC fight and then turn up as like, hey, I'm going to need Jericho in the head again, it's just like, I imagine Dana White wouldn't take to that too kindly. But we'll see. I'm personally going to go with the Inner Circle on this one.
I'm going to say American Top Team. I just don't know how.
Okay, so we move on now to the finals of the AEW World Championship Eliminator. Actually, We'll hold on that one because obviously that has ramifications to the main event as well. So we'll maybe talk about those ones
maybe
simultaneously. In which case we'll move on to the Women's World Championship match. Dr. Britt Baker, D.M.D defends against Conti. So it's hard to really say too much. They're super exciting about this beyond the fact that I'm sure it'll be a very good match because I like the two women involved. But again, it's one of those examples of Britt Baker's not losing this championship yet.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to build up super anticipation for it. I can obviously enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to the match. I'm looking to see what Ty can do. But Conti is not going to win the world championship from Britt Baker. There's only like a handful of people that are really going to be in that circle that could do it, and several of them aren't even in the company yet. But Conti is is probably unlikely to be the one to take the belt from her. But they're doing the right thing, I feel, having this match take place here, because Conti has been winning matches consistently on Dark and Elevation and on TV and on the actual TV shows as well. She's the top ranked, like, number one contender for the women's world title. They use the rankings quite a lot more prominently in the women's division than they've done in the men's side of things. And so this is the right match to happen at this point in time. You do Thunder Rosa slightly later on, but right now it's just a stepping stone match for Britt Baker to prolong her reign up into the new year.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing about that, and I have to bring it up every time we talk about her, Conti is so good. Like, we ragged on her when she left NXT, thinking, she'll probably never wrestle again, whatever. She's so good. And it's so great to see her shine. And it's sad that she's got to be fodder for Britt Baker. But she's got to be fodder for Britt Baker.
Yeah, again, I don't feel like this is by any means the end of the road for Conti. I think that especially now with the TBS Championship coming on the scene, that she will be holding gold eventually. Whether it is the TBS Championship, it's the World Championship, if they bring in tag team titles, she'll definitely be a champion in AEW sooner or later. It's just it won't be on November 13th. Well, no, yeah, November 13th. It will be Britt Baker will win. She's got bigger things on the horizon for her, but I feel like this will do a lot to elevate Conti in the eyes of fans who may not necessarily be, I guess, a believer in her just yet.
Yeah, and I think it'll go a long way. And she's so good, man. I can't believe that they didn't let her lose in NXT. It's sad too, because I think with the way that they've gone, they would have preferred her for NXT 2.0. They just never got there, you know?
Yeah. So both of us going Britt Baker, retains the championship.
Absolutely.
And so let's talk about the men's world championship picture, because this is slightly more complex. So we have, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, the finals of the AEW World Championship Eliminator tournament final. It's Bryan Danielson against Miro. Of course, Miro's involvement was due to Jon Moxley going into alcohol treatment program, and so this means that Miro's put forward his opportunity, and this is a match that I believe we talked about has never actually happened in WWE,
which is insane.
Yeah, we never saw Daniel Bryan versus Rusev, so now we're going to see, I guess, in many people's eyes, the upgraded version of both people, with Bryan Danielson on the role of a lifetime at the moment against Miro, who is also on the role of his career. And then, but that obviously neatly leads into the main event of the show for the AEW World Championship, the long-awaited, rematch, as it were, Kenny Omega defending, from last year. Kenny Omega defending the World Championship against Hangman Adam Page. I guess the first question is, do you feel like this is the start of a trend where the winners of the Eliminator tournament final will be battling for the World Championship at the main event at every single Full Gear?
I think maybe if it was Mox and Danielson, I might be more tempted to say yes. But no, I think it just so happens that they had this particular story told, because these are, after all, two elite guys, and they had to get to this story.
But really, the predictions kind of, I don't think they necessarily need to influence the other, but it's worth talking about both of them at the same time because, of course, the likelihood is that whoever wins the World Championship match, their first challenger will be the person that wins the tournament final.
Oh, for sure. I don't know if they're doing Winter is Coming, because I know that they're doing the Battle of the Belts next year and stuff like that. But for sure, they need to do something with Miro. I'm going to say it right now, I think it'll be Miro and Hangman in Winter is Coming. And it has to be Hangman, because if it's not Hangman, then what are we even doing? Like, Tony Khan on today's media scrum basically said, it's a great story and we're all looking forward to seeing Hangman get some redemption. Like, it has to be Hangman Page, and it'll be great. People forget Full Gear is kind of named after him with all Full Gear Ready stuff. I'm surprised that hasn't come back yet. It's just a good story. It's a feel-good story. Hangman beats Kenny. Hangman gets his first major world championship. It's a feel-good story.
Yeah, again, this has been the kind of main narrative that AEW has been telling throughout their entire lifespan so far. This is a feud that's practically 2 years in the making, from them both coming in at the elite stage and Hangman being the first guy to obviously challenge for one of the first two guys to challenge for the AEW World Championship and losing out there, and then losing to Omega in the Eliminator tournament final last year. They were tag team champions together. Kenny's then skyrocketed and become like the face of the brand, and Page has had to always be clawing his way back up from underneath and getting so close, and occasionally having to just be falling back, being pushed further and further away from claiming the prize that he so richly wants. The crowd is super hot for him, arguably more than ever before. Omega has been an excellent heel champion, and he's taken on all comers and beaten the vast majority of them. And yeah, the natural conclusion to this should be that Page wins the championship at Full Gear. But they've done, I think, a good job at least adding some doubt and adding some intrigue about the fact that Omega could win this, because I remember, I'm pretty sure most people watching at the time had the exact same thought process when it came to Omega's first shot against Okada for the World Championship. Now it's Kenny Omega's time. Kenny has to win the title at Wrestle Kingdom. That's going to be the way that it is. And Kenny didn't win the world title at Wrestle Kingdom. Kenny didn't win it at the second time of asking against Okada. It had to take, technically their fourth match, but that his third shot at the World Championship was when he eventually won it. And so, because obviously Kenny's involved in this, and I'm sure Kenny is heavily involved in at least the creative side of this match and how the thing is progressing, there's always the element of doubt to whether he'll drop the title here to Page, or whether they feel like there's even more months that we could extend this for, allowing Kenny to take on the likes of Danielson for the world title, Punk for the world title, other people like that, before Page comes back for one final attempt.
It's interesting because I think it's an American audience, so it's different still, even though everybody's smarter. Like, I don't know if they could handle a Hangman loss here.
Yeah, that is the big question, really. Do they trust AEW enough? I mean, AEW, I feel like, has built up enough goodwill in terms of their booking that I feel like people will trust the process to a degree, but they have pushed Hangman so strong, and they've made him such a lovable underdog babyface, and positioned him so well up to this point that I would be amazed, or just like, I don't know how it would be to see him lose this match, what the reaction would be, how deflating that could be. And I feel like if you don't have Bray Wyatt or somebody else lined up that can come in immediately afterwards and diffuse that situation, it could be a very, I guess, dour way to close off what could arguably want to be the biggest pay-per-views in AEW's history.
On the flip side of that, if you have Bryan Danielson win, and you have Kenny Omega win, then you got people excited because, oh shit, I guess Bryan's really going to beat.
Yeah. I mean, you could have Bryan then turn up and then obviously Fate stare down Omega, and then that could hopefully get the excitement back up. But I feel like it's the constant battle between what's more mainstream, what would attract more mainstream eyes, and
I'll say that
what does your core fan base want?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I'm of the opinion that Bryan Daniel, like, this win for Hangman Page would have meant so much more as we were building the All Out and Punk wasn't a guarantee. And obviously, we didn't know about Bryan and Adam Cole. I think that a Hangman win would have been the best way to go, right?
Yeah.
And then you get all these people, and you're like, oh well, shit. If I had to choose between Bryan Danielson and Hangman Page, I see myself choosing Bryan Danielson.
I feel like it's one of the catch-22s that you said earlier. Like, they have the best problem in the world, which they have an absolutely stacked main event scene, which could get more stacked in the coming weeks and months. But they've built this story so much, and you have a core audience who have followed this story from the start all the way to now, and they've seen Hangman's journey, and they've gotten invested in Hangman's journey. And so it's whether you want to risk pissing off that foundation level in order to, in the hope of, okay, they'll get over it because they love the promotion, and we'll see Omega versus Bryan, like Danielson too, and that will draw more mainstream eyes, the lapsed WWE fans and all that stuff to watch that rematch take place. And I feel like AEW is the promotion, and the promotion that I would want them to see is the one that rewards the people that have stuck around for the longest time and trust that Page does have the power and does have the potential to take this title and run with it and become the star that we know that Danielson already is, that Punk already is, that Omega already is, rather than just fall back in the idea of like, we just don't know about this guy yet. We don't know what this guy will be like as champion, so we must fall back on what we know. I feel like they're in the position now that
he
they
doesn't
feel
have to be champion for long.
I know, but it's just the idea that I personally, I was of the original idea when we were talking about, okay, they're obviously going to get, Hangman's going to win the title eventually. I don't know if I want him to be a transitional champion, or I want him to be, like, I don't want him to drop it at Revolution. I want him to have a reign. I want him to hold it to at least Double or Nothing, if not longer. Because I feel like I think I know they had Moxley hold it for a while, but I like the fact that they give their championship long reigns, and eventually they do need to have somebody come in and drop it after a month or whatever, and to mix things up a little bit. But I feel like that really stands to maybe cut the legs off at Hangman if you do that. Obviously, if he wins the title and then we find out it was just all they were all just invested in the chase, and his momentum doesn't carry on before like prolong beyond the victory here, and it starts to fade out a little bit, and they're just looking at who's the next guy, then of course you probably should just pivot away and put the title on someone else after that point, whether it's like Punk or MJF or Danielson or whoever. But I feel like you need to at least give him a chance to be a proper champion.
It's hard, but it's so hard though, because you have so many people that are ready now. Like Adam Cole is ready now. He's hot off NXT TV. He could be a great champion for them now. MJF could be a great lengthy champion for them just because he's such a shitbag that he can hold it for a while. I don't like with Adam Page. The money is so in the chase that I don't know if it's what like. People compare him to Austin because of the drinking and all that. I was comparing him to Austin. Austin never had that belt for a long, extended period of time. Granted, television was different in the way that the philosophy was, but Austin always was chasing. Like they built nearly, 4 WrestleManias back to back of chasing. Like And I think that might be what it is with Hangman. Maybe it's not, he's not meant to have a long reign, and then you can tell that story of, well, you can win the big one, but then you can't hold it. I don't know. It's so hard because right now all I'm thinking of is that pop is going to be tremendous, and people are going to be so happy, and happiness is great, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, again, there are a lot of question marks surrounding it, but my worry is that if you have Hangman win and then he doesn't hold it for long and you do try and tell that story, there's only so many times that you can go back to this guy is an underdog, and so this guy probably doesn't have the ability or doesn't have or something about him to be the champion that we all want him to be. And then eventually you just have to, if you tell that story too much, then eventually people will just stop believing in that guy. So I think that, as we've spoken a lot about the championship match, we need to talk a bit more about the tournament final. So you think Miro will get the victory because if Paige does win, then it's more natural to go with Miro because he's a heel.
Right, because if Danielson wins, I'm of the opinion that even if it's Hangman, I think Danielson should just win the belt. You cannot deny this motherfucker headlined WrestleMania, and he's having the time of his life. We've seen with Bryan Danielson that you need to pull the trigger because you never know when it's over. And if he's willing to give you what he's given you already, then you need to pull that trigger now. So if Bryan wins, you gotta go all the way with it, even if it means giving Hangman a 2-month reign or whatever.
But I guess my flip side question to that is, would you have Miro be the first guy to beat Bryan Danielson?
That's the issue. No, I would. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, it's just I love Miro, and I think Miro should be world champion eventually. I feel like he's done so much to. I was already a huge fan of Rusev, just to even elevate my own expectations of what he would be in AEW, and I feel like I would be totally cool with him winning this match. I think there is nothing more that you can do better to cement Hangman Page is like, okay, we're going with this guy, and this guy is a world champion, and this isn't going to be just some fluky one-time thing. It's not all about the chase. Is to have Bryan Danielson win this tournament, and then Page to defend the championship against him and beat him. I think that Bryan Danielson will be back, and Bryan Danielson, I'm almost certain, will be a champion in AEW at some point. But I mean, that's really the thing that you could do to really establish, like, this guy is a top player. Hangman Page is a guy for the future, and he will be one of our absolute pillars forever, is to have him beat Omega and then beat Danielson. And then you're like, okay, this guy is the real deal. So it wasn't just like a fun little experiment. This is, I mean, they've already built 2 years of their TV around him and Omega's story. I don't see why they would want to immediately pivot away from that and just go, okay, Danielson, as you say, he was the main event at WrestleMania. He's a multi-time WWE champion, so obviously he should beat Hangman Page. It's that feels very, for want of a better phrase, that sounds very TNA to me.
Yeah, but it's different because it's Danielson.
I know it's different.
Like TNA would be like, well, you see, Damien Sandow is on their TV. That means we got to run with him.
No, I understand that, but I also go into the idea that, and again, I'm a huge mark for Kurt Angle, as everyone who's listened to this thing knows. Angle won the title in TNA way too much because he was the top guy in WWE, and so they decided, oh, he's a huge name in the world of wrestling.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when you look back on it, him and Sting and like AJ were probably like the top 3 champions they ever had.
And I feel like you could obviously do the thing of have Miro win this match. He hands Danielson his first loss, and so Danielson has to build himself back up to another title shot, and Miro could lose to Page. And again, that's a story, but it does, I think, even though, again, I love Miro, I feel like it frames Hangman's reign a little bit immediately of like saying, okay, he's taking on the upper mid-card, lower main event guys, and that's who he's going to be beating, and then eventually he'll take on somebody who we firmly know is a top main event guy, whether it's Danielson, Punk, MJF, Cole, someone of that stature, and he'll lose the title to them because he's at a certain level. Whereas if you have Page beat Danielson, you have him go up against, say, Adam Cole, or you have him go up against MJF, and he gets a victory against them as well, then you really do start to establish him as like, okay, this is a guy who's at the top end of the company. And then whoever beats him gets a rub from Page, rather than Page just getting the rub from Omega and then having to lose to someone who is a quote-unquote star. I think you should try and build the champion up, is what I'm saying. And I don't want to see him just be, the end of this story is like the end of Page's momentum.
I think that Page is golden either way. It's just that they weren't expecting this, and you can tell, like, they were not expecting that they would get Adam Cole. They probably weren't expecting that they'd get Bryan Danielson. The only one they might have been expecting was CM Punk, who I think wants to take the long road to the title anyway.
Yeah. All I'm saying is I'm conscious of the problems of potentially turning Page into Kofi Mania, which was a great moment, but it wasn't a great story beyond that moment. And I don't want Page to fall into the same trap, just because there are bigger names in the company, but you can make Page into one of those bigger names. I think they're really doing a great job of doing that.
AEW is at least safe, where they don't have 50 years of legacy, to where you're always going to go, well, he's no Rock, he's no Austin, and it's like, anybody who wins the WWE title now is so, like, well, look at they put it on Big E. Like, who is Big E in the grand scheme of things? And it's like, that's almost not fair to the people who hold the WWE Championship today. AEW is golden in that they don't have that issue yet, because yes, you can say Page isn't Jericho, he isn't Mox, and he isn't Omega, but he is a golden guy in this company and on that level of those same guys, and he can prove it by beating Omega, and he, will eventually get the win back on Jericho, I'm sure, and he will eventually pin Moxley. And that's where I think it differs. Whereas Kofi Mania, it was like, well, what do we do now? Because there's constant reference to the past. And I think it's a trap that bit Shawn and Brett in the ass. It was like, well, they're not doing Hogan numbers. And just because Austin came around, right place, right time, right guy for the right era, when they started surpassing Hogan numbers, then Cena fell into the trap of, well, they're not doing Austin numbers. You know what I mean? Like, thankfully, AEW doesn't have that. And I think that's why no matter what happens with Hangman Page, he'll be okay. But I do think he wins here, and I'll say he pins Miro just to keep Miro's story going of, like, he's losing and failing his wife. Because, again, if you do Bryan, and maybe Bryan can get the better of Miro at some point, but if you do Bryan Danielson, he's got to be Hangman, and that's unfortunate.
Well, I'm going to buck that trend and suggest otherwise, because I believe that Bryan Danielson will win the Eliminator tournament and Hangman Page will win the World Championship, and Page will beat Bryan Danielson at in that upcoming title match. So those are my long-term predictions.
If they do Page and Danielson and want them to not beat Page, you do that at Battle of the Belts, right? And obviously that's a play on Clash of Champions, and you have it like a reverse Sting Flair where they go the distance, and then Page gets the respect of going, you are the distance with Bryan Danielson, just like Kenny Omega. You are on that level, and Bryan turns his attention to whatever else, but he moves away from the AEW title.
Okay. I think that's definitely a way they can go. And again, that's the thing, the beauty about AEW, there are plenty of options. I personally think Bryan's going to take Page to his limits, and Page will still beat him. That's what I'm going to go out, like, put my neck on the line and say that I think that Page will just beat Bryan Danielson.
I'd be all right with Page being the first guy to beat Danielson because it establishes a champion.
Yeah. And again, I would not be upset with Miro winning. And it's a thing we've mentioned probably up and down this card, is just they are I'm not upset with the direction
Almost
really
every
they'll go with
potential
anything.
outcome is good.
Yeah.
So it really helps the show.
Yeah. So we can just sit back and relax and enjoy it as fans rather than be super analytical about what
Wait
directions
till
they'll go
next
to.
week when we're talking about Survivor Series.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And it's just like,
none of this
it
stuff
exists.
matters.
And that is the difference.
That's the difference.
Right
Like
now,
all these things have like outcomes where most of them could be good, and we're interested to see where they'll progress beyond the direction they take. Whereas Survivor Series is like, well, they can really go any direction with a lot of these things, but none of it actually matters because this is a show that is built around some imaginary brand warfare.
right.
So hopefully we've lifted your spirits a little bit more in this one and been a bit more vibrant and a bit more energetic towards this show, because I think it's safe to say we are both tremendously looking forward to it. We're going to be watching it live. We won't be doing a live post show after it for a multitude of reasons, mainly being that Tony is not available.
And
so,
the only other person to be on the podcast with Callum would be me, and I'll be doing the AEW media scrums and all that. So you'll probably get one midday Sunday as we record early in the morning on Sunday.
Yeah, so we'll get that over. It'll be basically as soon as Tony wakes up from his slumber. I don't know what the time difference is over in Brazil right now.
Ew.
So it'll just be a case of we record it on the Sunday, we get it over to Tony. Tony gets it live as soon as he's able to do so. But you will get an AEW post show. Me and Rob will review everything that happened. It'll just be slightly later, slightly back to the traditional format as opposed to the live stuff that we've been doing more recently. So
in regards to Survivor Series, that is the day Tony returns from Brazil.
Yeah.
So we are also unsure about that. But in 2 weeks' time, things will return back to normal. For now, keep enjoying the wonderful fantasy draft content and everything else we have here for you on the Smark Out Moment channel, because there's plenty of it to enjoy.
Yep, and we'll just leave you with a couple more plugs. Obviously, you mentioned the Patreon beforehand. If you're able to chuck a few spare dollars our way, that would be greatly appreciated. Of course, there's other ways to support us through the TeePublic and Redbubble merchandise shops. There's also, if you are watching us on the YouTube, there's the little applause icon, and you can join the membership there. That's basically the same as the Patreon as well, just on the YouTube side of things. Still get access to the same kind of content. So if you want to join us as a member on there as well, feel free to do so. Of course, there's the smarkoutmoment.com website. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well, at SmarkOutMoment, the Mega Maniacs, of course. Over on your side of things, Rob, what we got to look forward to?
Of course, you've got Fightful.com, which is covering all things NXT, all things AEW, all things, everything really in the world of wrestling. Sean Ross Sapp works so hard on Fightful Select and all the scoops that go into that. And that's a photo to you of all things media coverage for Full Gear. And also, for my personal side of things, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Twitch at DudeFelice. I've been streaming nightly on Twitch, and I'm looking forward to getting that going. Hopefully getting into more of a rhythm where I can stream a little bit more during the day as well. I have plans for fantasy booking things and tier lists, but right now I'm just playing video games and just trying to build a community. So go follow me over there at twitch.tv/DudeFelice, and I thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely go follow Rob on Twitch, see what everything that he's doing there. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14, and that's kind of mainly it as well. Obviously, there's a ton of like retro content that me and Rob have done in the past with 2001 and Wrestling Odyssey and the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast. So if you're ever in the mood to just put a podcast on and listen to things all the way through, there's plenty of material for you to sink your ears into. And of course, Tony's not going to be super heavily involved in putting content out at the moment, but we should mention, of course, the sister website, fanboysanonymous.com as well. Check out all the stuff if you're interested in all the geek culture related things, movies, comic books, TV, video games. Fanboysanonymous.com is the place to be. So check all that stuff out. Check out the YouTube channel, our Review to a Kill series, the James Bond franchise that we did early this year. All the episodes are up there as well, and they are pretty timeless as well. So check all that stuff out. And yeah, that draws us to the end of the Full Gear prediction. So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you enjoy the show. Hopefully we've not raised the expectations too high, but that's their fault for putting such a great card together.
And I think they will smash expectations, quite frankly.
Yeah. And we will be back to talk about how they do so. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.